Welcome back to a slightly delayed episode of IndyCar Hot Takes. I had a bunch of things come up in my personal life over the past couple of days, but thankfully we're back to a little bit normal here, so sorry for the delay, but drop your hot takes about IndyCar in the comments, and hopefully for next week we'll actually get to discuss them. So 2 weeks ago, we have some hot takes to go over, and the first one comes from MLG Pro Swag 69, and wow, I can tell you're a gamer, but he actually has a pretty good and interesting hot take, which is that the race the day before the Super Bowl was a fantastic idea by the IRL that should be brought back by IndyCar, or, heaven forbid, taken by NASCAR if Penske doesn't want it. So here's some context if you don't know what MLG is talking about. In the early days of the IRL, the Walt Disney World Speedway race actually took place on the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and it worked out pretty well in some cases. There were some years, I think 97 was a specific example of this, where the IRL race was on ABC Sports and then the Super Bowl was on ABC Sports the next day, so there was some broadcast synergy there. I think it's a good idea to do it because, number one, the Super Bowl obviously takes place before the NASCAR season begins. And from my perspective, if IndyCar could get their season started earlier, even if they want to end earlier, like in the middle of September, or even by Labor Day, I don't necessarily think an early end of the season is an issue with IndyCar. I think the big issue is that the front end of their schedule is barren and has way too many holes in it. And there was an article just today, I mean, literally right before I started recording this, that I read by Nathan Brown of the Indy Star that said even Texas might be in trouble. We might not have a Texas race next year, so that would be another gigantic hole in the schedule early on in the year. So I think more races early on in the year, and in particular more races closer to the end of the NFL season, is a really smart idea, and making the Indy 500 kind of the midway point of the season, I think, is a really solid plan going forward. Wave Rod says, hot take, the fact that Dale Coyne is still around and filming a team is an achievement in perspective itself, having outlasted teams from Gallus, Craco, True Sports, Shearston, Patrick, Newman Haas, Walker, Pac West, and so many other better funded teams. Yeah, and this is not the first time we're going to talk about Dale Coyne Racing and kind of sing their praises in this video. But I have always thought that that's a significant achievement. I mean, they are truly the last Champ Car team left. They're a survivor. They've been around since the 80s. Dale's done such a good job with that team. But they're not just an also-ran, at least anymore. I think in a lot of ways that team and its reputation is wrong for what that team is now. I mean, a lot of people think of it as the team that it was, either with Dale showing up with his own chassis in the 80s or in the 90s taking pay drivers, or in the 2000s you didn't even know who was going to be driving the car each weekend. But now it's a very professional team. It's a very top organization, frankly. I think it's one of those teams that knocks on the door every single year of breaking into that conversation as one of the better teams. But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like drivers or engineers stick around there and keep that consistency. I would say the consistency of the driver lineup and the engineering staff is the only thing that holds back Dale Coyne Racing from being a top-tier team in the IndyCar series. But at the same time, they have survived. They found a way to keep going, which, like you mentioned, so many other teams have not. D. Gibbs says, hot take, a new chassis and new powertrain, including the 2.4 liter, which was abandoned, are imperative to IndyCar's growth. A new state-of-the-art car will also draw interest from other world-class drivers, which is what the series' biggest strength is. Kimi and the Australian dude, aka Shane Van Gisbergen from the Supercars, did not drive NASCAR just because they were bored. They wanted to try the new car as well. The reveal of the new F2 car has me fantasizing about what a new Indy car would look like. And if I could remember how to read, perhaps I would be able to solve this problem a little bit better. But I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that anytime you see a new car in a series or a new rule set, there's always an influx of interest, fan base-wise, driver-wise, team-wise. It's something that we'll touch on a little bit later in this video with another hot take. But It amazes me. It amazes me how few race fans these days, the modern racing fan, seems to not understand that in auto racing, the car matters. It matters so much that it affects a ton of the interest surrounding the series. The car is not a football. It is a competitor. It is a player on the field, if you want to use a stick and ball reference. But it's not the football, okay? It's just so frustrating to me that they just don't seem to be able to understand that for whatever reason. TGL Studios says, hot take, push to pass on short ovals could help fight the aero wash and dirty air problems that are so bad at that style of low banking racetracks. I'll go a step further, and they did actually kind of implement this because they've actually on the short ovals begun using the road course boost level, the turbocharger boost level. But I don't think they've gone far enough. And I think the oval tracks, all of them, including Indianapolis, would benefit significantly from having a massive power increase. I think more horsepower would help a significant amount with the lack of passing. I think what you have now is the cars are within such a tight window of one another that there's an obvious reason why drafting is so important and saving fuel is so important. It's because you can't drive away from someone else. You can't use your driver's skill or your setup knowledge or any of that. Your tire management, a lot of that doesn't come into play anymore on the ovals. And I think more horsepower would help that significantly. Now, are they ever going to do that? No, but I think so many people were talking about the dangerous driving at the end of the 500 where they drive into the pit exit. I mean, that's, if there's more of a clear example that the cars don't have enough horsepower and are too gripped up, the fact that they can drive off of turn 4 and immediately head down at 220 miles an hour towards the pit lane, that probably means the power to grip ratio isn't quite what it needs to be, in my opinion. Green Hornet says, semi-hot take, unless there is a new technical revolution in the automotive industry that Penske Entertainment can hitch their wagons to, there's no engine formula that will drag that magic third manufacturer in regardless of Penske's connections to the auto industry. The best they can hope for is that Judd or Cosworth makes an engine and some Chinese auto manufacturer to slap their badge on it, because they want brand recognition in the US. There must be a major loosening of the regulations to allow for major technical development, which may pique the interest of any international auto manufacturer. Variety is the spice of life, and IndyCar should allow all types of engines and powertrain combinations. I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, there are some challenges to that, mainly the fact that there is a Dallara chassis that is the exclusive supplier to this series, which is designed to house a twin turbocharged V6. Now, what a lot of people don't remember or realize is that IndyCar's original engine formula, which has turned into specifically a 2.2 liter V6 twin turbocharged, and now we'll have a hybrid starting in 2024, was actually more open than a lot of people remember. You could do a single turbocharged V6, you could also do a twin turbocharged V6, and a lot of people forget this, but you could do a 4-cylinder engine. No one built one in 2012, but that was part of the regulations originally drafted in 2012. Now, no one bit on those regulations, and maybe that's why they've been significantly reduced in terms of the creativity that the manufacturers can use. But at the end of the day, and I think that's why I've suggested a couple of times that IndyCar goes to a BOP formula, because I just don't see how you could have, I don't know how someone could take a 12-cylinder or a 10-cylinder or even like a 4-cylinder IndyCar or an engine from a different design standpoint and make it work in the current IndyCar. You would need a total change of philosophy, and I just don't see IndyCar as being willing to totally change their philosophy. I mean, you mentioned Judd and Cosworth. Judd actually did build the Lotus engine, which is a twin turbocharged 2.2 liter V6, which technically is still legal for IndyCar competition, but because it doesn't have a manufacturer badge on it and there isn't one coming, that engine could never run just as a Judd. Similar with Cosworth. They've apparently had a design on the books for years and years and years of an IndyCar engine, but no one has ever come to Cosworth and said, we want to badge this, we want to build it. And until IndyCar changes their philosophy in what they expect from manufacturers, or perhaps adopted like a sprint car model where you don't have to have a manufacturer badge on your engine anymore, or like how it used to be in IndyCar racing where you could just show up with a Cosworth. Until there's that philosophy change, I agree with you. I just don't see another manufacturer coming down the line. Canon Dio says, hot take, David Malukas moving to McLaren is more of a lateral move instead of an improvement. Malukas goes from the top driver at Dale Coyne to driver 3, driver 4 at the Indy 500, at a team whose top name driver can't even win. And I would agree with you on this one. The David Malukas move to McLaren is a very interesting one. And I don't think it's talked about nearly enough about how much McLaren underperformed this year, given the expectations that I think everyone on that team and pretty much everyone on the outside had for them. Pato O'Ward, I don't necessarily want to say he took a step backwards, but I wouldn't say that he dramatically improved either. Obviously, he didn't, because he didn't win any races this year. I mean, he was close at times, he had the speed, but the team was never able to execute. And, to be fair, he probably should have won St. Petersburg, and it was an engine issue, a plenum event that prevented that. But you look at Felix Rosenqvist, had such great pace throughout the year, could never seal the deal, and Alexander Rossi, everyone thought when he joined that team that was going to be some boon, and ultimately Rossi was fairly anonymous throughout the entire year, including Tony Kanaan at the Indy 500. I think everybody expected that was going to be a more competitive combination, and it just wasn't. Going forward, you got some of the same drivers obviously coming back next year with O'Ward and Rossi. Rosenqvist is moving to Meyer Shank, which I think will be either a damning indication of what he was capable of at McLaren, or confirm what it looked like on the outside at McLaren. But yeah, Malukas going to McLaren I think will help them at the Indy 500, but I wouldn't necessarily expect that Malukas is just going to go out and win races at McLaren any more so than he was going to be able to do it at Coyne. I think the big difference to me with Malukas going to McLaren is that just strengthens that Indy 500 program for the team. Stig McQueen says, hot take, the argument that winning the Indy 500 is a bigger deal than winning the IndyCar Points Championship doesn't make sense to me. I get that the Indy 500 receives what feels like 98% of the public's attention during the season, but winning the Points Championship requires a ton of consistency by the driver throughout the season, requires strong performances on the road courses, street courses, and ovals alike, and requires that the mechanics be spot on the money throughout the season as well. I just happen to believe that if I were an IndyCar driver, I'd take the Points Championship over an Indy 500 win any day of the week. And so, I mean, on the surface, I can see where you're coming from, but you made the point. And it's a point that I have become more and more aware of as I try to make this business work as a YouTuber existing within this space. The Indianapolis 500 works. It just works. It's something that has not only the public's attention in terms of like the motorsport fans, but it also has the attention of the mainstream. And that's something that the IndyCar Championship just does not do. And I just don't see I don't see the IndyCar Championship ever being anywhere close to as prestigious as the Indianapolis 500. And it's definitely a big issue. There's no doubt about it. And I can tell you as someone who went to 15 out of 17 races in 2022 and had to significantly cut that back just to survive in this space for this year. And I can only tell you what my numbers tell me, right? I mean, I'm sure you're going to see a lot of positive PR spin. You're already seeing that about the TV numbers with IndyCar and how there's growth. That growth is in much older demographics. We're talking like, 50 years old and or older. It's not young people. There's not a big replacement rate. In fact, the 18 to 49 numbers continue to drop on the TV number side. And I've definitely seen that in my numbers as well. Now, the Indy 500 is a totally different aspect. The Indy 500, you know, it's so funny because you look at my numbers from the Indy GP, which took place 2 days before the opening day of practice for the Indianapolis 500. That video got 7,000 views. And the next day, or 2 days later, there was a rain delay coverage for the Indy 500 practice that didn't even happen. No cars even went out on the racetrack. We stayed inside and got rained on all day. And that video did like 25,000 or 30,000 views. And just out of nowhere. It's like, where did those people come from? And, you know, I wish I could figure that out. I wish I could figure out that that conundrum. But that's the big difference. There's a specific reason why the Indy 500 is valued more than the rest of the championship. It's because when you're forward-facing, when you want the attention of the public, when you're not just racing to get in the leader circle or racing to appease your manufacturer and your B2B sponsors, the Indy 500 is a forward-facing consumer product. And I just don't know if the rest of the season is that at this point. So it's very difficult for a driver, because drivers, you know, they have the same ego we do, right? They want to be recognized for what they do, and you don't get any more recognition, you know, as an IndyCar driver than not only qualifying or competing in the Indianapolis 500, but certainly winning the Indianapolis 500. That's the top. That's the top of the mountain. And the championship, just unfortunately, is always going to be second fiddle to that. And the final hot take from Buy Not. He says, the IR05 looked fantastic, and their sound is heavily underrated. That chassis has always been the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word IndyCar. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because while I don't have a ton of fun, fuzzy memories about the IR05, I would personally say the generation of IRL chassis before that, I liked a lot more. I thought they looked a lot better. You look at the chassis that ran from 2000 to 2002 are kind of the ones that I really think were the best looking IRL cars of that era, and best sounding as well. But the funny thing about the IR05 is that at the time, and I can tell you this because I was very active in the fan base at that time of IndyCar, that everyone complained about that car being old in the tooth and a grandpa car and old, and it wasn't state of the art anymore. And that car only had a 6-year lifespan, and now we're approaching double that for the current chassis. So it's just kind of funny how times have changed and how perspectives get warped as the current era plods along. I think the IR05, to me, the best, highest points of that formula are the big, exciting month of Mays that we had post-merger from 2008 to 2011, where engines could be obtained by anyone who pretty much wanted one, and the chassis could be obtained by any team that really wanted one. And in fact, we had over 40 cars attempt to qualify for the 2011 Indy 500. To me, that was the biggest benefit of that whole era, and it's something that I miss greatly and wish I could have covered. So that's IndyCar Hot Takes, part number 3. Part 4 will be out next week. And also, we're going to start doing some NASCAR hot takes as well. We're going to keep expanding this concept and see where it takes us. So thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more. I'll be back soon, and we'll see you in the next video.